Hey, welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to an Underwater Wednesday episode. We're back in the pool. It's been a while since we've been in the pool. And today we're going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I want to be talking about football head jigs. Summertime, if you're someone who can fish any of the Tennessee river system, the TVA lakes, ledge fishing, and using a football head jig is 100%, a thing to be doing. And this is the time to be doing it. All those fish are out deep on the ledges. And there are typically what I think to be three different fishing strategies for throwing a football head jig, three different retrieves. But I found something in doing this video that I think is very important with one of the retrieves, namely stroking a jig. And that's one of the beauties that I love about doing this channel is I can bring things to you and I can not only show you what you're doing, but show you what the bait is doing. And I think there is a total misconception amongst anglers about what they think the football head jig is doing when they're stroking a jig out on those ledges. So when we come back, we're going to get in the pool. We're going to show this to you. We're going to show you that technique along with the two other retrieves that I think are very important when you're fishing a football head jig. Stick around, guys. We will be back right after this. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. We're going to get in the pool pretty quick here. I'm going to just say it real quick. Let me do the business here. If you haven't, hit the subscribe button. We know a lot of people watch these Underwater Wednesdays, but they aren't subscribers. So it's time, hit the button, subscribe to the channel. We'd appreciate that. As well as be aware of the fact that we've got our virtual tournament starting July 1st. If you go back to the episode that we did 2 Fridays ago, it talks all about it. You got to get registered before July 1st. The tournament goes from July 1st through the month of July. Get in on it. Everybody wins prize. It's going to be a lot of fun. Check out that video from a couple of Fridays ago if you want more information. And make sure you get registered before the 1st of July. All right, so let's talk about a football head jig. I think there are 3 retrieves that you want to use when you're throwing a football head. One would be that stroking a jig kind of thing, and that's, throw the jig out, let it get to the bottom, and then real high on the rod tip, and then kind of let it go down. Up real high, let it go down, and it's kind of pendulum him up and down. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. The second retrieve is more just a dragging type of a retrieve. Let it get to the bottom, and basically you're moving your rod tip, and you want to feel every rock, every shell bed as you're bouncing that football head along the bottom. Okay, you're creating kind of a dust cloud and attracting the fish based on the noise that the jig is making as it's hitting those shells and rocks, the dust cloud that it's creating, and you're attracting fish that way. And then the third is kind of the combination of the two, more like a Carolina sweep, where you're sweeping the rod. The bait is actually coming up a little bit off the bottom and then coming back down. And again, that's the part that attracts the bass when that bait comes off the bottom and kind of rises up a little bit and then goes back down. One of the things that I'm going to say, because it's very important in this, and you'll notice it in the video, is I feel like it's super important when you're throwing a football head jig in either of those 3 retrieves is that you have a trailer that has kicking tails on it. Like this is the Rage Craw. And these tails, you'll see it in the video, these tails flutter. This is not, in my opinion, this is not the time to be throwing like a chigger craw or flapping tails. You want these tails to to wiggle and flutter, to swim. The other thing that's very important is trimming that skirt. We've talked about this in other episodes. Keep that skirt trimmed so that those tails are active. Now, let's get in the pool and let's talk about this. But before we do, I want to go over this misconception that people have about stroking a jig. When you're stroking a jig, you're raising your rod tip from literally, it could be down on the water all the way up. And maybe I've seen guys where we even like are raising our arms up over our head to get as much height as we can. And I think the misconception is that when we do that, we think that that jig is coming off the bottom and going that same 6 to 8 feet up that we're raising our rod tip. Well, the reality is that if you look at the geometry that's involved, you make a big long cast, 100 feet out or more. When you raise that rod tip, even if you're raising that rod tip 8 or whatever feet, you got the length of your rod plus you're raising your arms, it isn't coming off the bottom 8 feet or more. It's literally coming off the bottom maybe 4 feet and moving towards you the remainder of that. And so stroking a jig and getting that doesn't mean that that jig is going from the bottom and coming up. It's coming up maybe 4 feet. You're going to see this in the pool. You've kind of seen this illustration that I've had here. So let's get in the pool and let's demonstrate all 3 of these retrieves that we just talked about. So the first retrieve that we're going to show you is when we're stroking a jig. And this is the one that we're going to talk the most about because I think that guys are they have a total disconnect between what they think they're doing and what the bait is actually doing in the water. So I've let that bait sink down 12 feet in the water. I put my rod tip down and I'm going to raise my rod tip up to a 12 o'clock position and let that bait sink down. Take out the slack, raise my rod tip, let it sink down. Raise my rod tip, let it sink down. And I can do it, I'm kind of doing it in a slower motion to kind of describe for you what's going on, but if I was fishing, I would be like that. Now, let's take a look at what that looks like actually in the water. The second retrieve that we're going to show you is basically what I'm just calling dragging a football head. And so again, I'm going to cast it out. I'm going to let it hit the bottom. And now I'm just dragging that football head along the bottom. I'm feeling for the bottom. I'm kind of giving a little bit of a rod tip action, but that bait is 100% maintaining contact with the bottom, and you can see those legs of the trailer kind of working as I'm working that bait along the bottom. So when I'm dragging it, my rod tip is pointed down I'm kind of twitching it with my rod, and I'm slowly taking up line as I'm twitching the bait. But again, maintaining that contact with the bottom. And let's take a look at what that looks like in the water. And then the third retrieve, this is what I consider to be kind of a Carolina rig retrieve. Again, I let the bait get down to the bottom, but this time rather than slow twitching it, I'm just gonna pull the bait, drag it, reel back up to it. Pull the bait, drag it, pull back up to it. And what you notice when we get to showing you what that bait looks like in the water is that that's kind of a combination of the two first retrieves. The bait doesn't swim as high as the stroking, but it sometimes takes off and comes off the bottom a little bit, maybe 4 or 5 inches off the bottom. So guys, those are the retrieves that I suggest that you use when you're fishing a football head jig, fishing ledges and things like that. And to be honest, there isn't any way of which one is best, but I would absolutely, okay, you're gonna try this one, see if it's working. If it's not, before you leave, you're gonna try the next one. If that's not working, you're gonna try the next one. There are definite times when one retrieve out of those 3 is going to be the one that is triggering fish. Or it might be that, hey, this is triggering them for now, and then all of a sudden they stop biting that retrieve, try a different one, and all of a sudden you may pop a few more of them using a different type of retrieve. So keep all 3 of those different retrieves in mind. And I think it was really interesting about stroking a jig. That's something that I learned today, and I hope that you found that helpful as well. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.